Good evening. Welcome to our virtual neighborhood meeting for our Tiger Senior Housing Project. I'm Josh Carrillo, an affordable housing developer with Northwest Housing Alternatives and also the project manager for this project. Now, traditionally, under normal circumstances, we would be holding this meeting in person at a location near the project site. However, as we are all fully aware, these are not normal times. As a result, we are holding this neighborhood meeting on Zoom for the protection of our attendees as well as our panelists. The meeting, which is being recorded, is available to the public and can be accessed through the City of Tigers engagement webpage. Now, we will start with introductions and an overview of the project and then transition over to our architect who will be presenting the latest designs. We will then conclude our neighborhood meeting with a Q&A session to answer any questions that you may have. And lastly, we will have a demographic survey available when you exit the Zoom meeting. We ask that you please take a moment to fill this out. Next slide. Actually, one more, please. Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Josh with Northwest Housing Alternatives. We are an affordable housing developer based in Oregon and have been in business for nearly 40 years, developing and operating affordable housing across Oregon for some of our most vulnerable populations, including low-income families and seniors. We were selected by the City of Tigard via a request for information process in July 2019 to develop this project on publicly owned land. Since then, we have focused our efforts on securing project funding, ramping up design, and community engagement. In fact, we have held about 20 community engagement events since our selection by the city to ensure we are hearing the needs of our local community, as well as communities of color. Of those 20 events, this will be our third public webinar that we have held on Zoom, with the first occurring back on June 25th and the second on October 8th. Our first webinar focused on resident services and programming, and our second webinar was an open house that provided a more general project update. This neighborhood meeting will really emphasize the design component of our project. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our panelists. I am joined by my colleague and Director of Housing Development, Destin Verdun, Sean Fairley, the Redevelopment Project Manager for the City of Tigard, and Gary Rabaja, Senior Associate with Sarah Architects. Thank you, gentlemen, for your participation tonight. And now I will move to the next slide, please. Now I will be reading our statement of purpose. This meeting is regarding senior housing alongside the Senior Center, which is located at 8815 Southwest O'Mara Street, Tigard, Oregon, 97223, and is being held as required by the City of Tigard Development Review Process. The purpose of this meeting is to inform neighbors of the project as currently planned. This meeting is not a decision forum and is not to approve or disapprove the project in whole or in part. It is to share information regarding the project and to solicit constructive input from neighbors and affected property owners. Application for the project being discussed here has not yet been submitted to the city. Therefore, the project will be at various stages of planning and some details may not be available at this time. Property owners of record within 500 feet should have received neighborhood meeting information and a list of frequently asked questions along with the notice of this meeting. This meeting is not attended by city staff in order to encourage dialogue between the developer and affected neighbors. Your comments and questions will be taken down and submitted with the application for consideration by the city planning staff. Property owners within 500 feet will be notified after a complete application is submitted. They will be provided an opportunity to comment. Any appeals are decided based on the provisions of applicable laws and the development code. For questions regarding the development review process, please contact the City of Tigard Planning Department. For project details, you will need to contact the developer, which is us, Northwest Housing Alternatives. Now that we have completed our statement of purpose, we will move over to the next slide where I will be providing a brief overview of our project. So to provide a brief overview of our project, I first want to take a minute and show one of our renderings of this project, which is a newly constructed 4-story building with wood frame construction and provides this project will provide 57 affordable apartment homes to seniors 62 and older. In addition, Washington County has awarded 23 project-based vouchers to this project and over 6.2 million in funding from that Metro Housing Bond. The building will be built to solar-ready standards and is estimated to cost a little under $21 million. Project is expected to break ground in February 2022, just about a year out from now, and take approximately 14 months to construct. We anticipate that lease-up will occur in late spring 2023. The project is located in a terrific location for senior housing. First, you have Fennel Creek, which is just north of the site. You also have the Tiger Public Library and City Hall are both within a quarter mile of the project site. And just as important, the site shares the same address as the existing Tiger Senior Center, which will allow opportunities to synergize between the two buildings. The site is situated in downtown Tigard, which also happens to be an urban renewal district that is undergoing revitalization efforts and significant investment. And lastly, the Southwest Corridor Light Rail is currently planned to connect downtown Tigard to Portland, which will be located just 0.75 miles away from our site. And now I will transition to the next slide, please. And now with further ado, I will turn this over to our project architect to present the latest designs. And as a reminder, please take a moment at the conclusion of this meeting to fill out our demographics survey.
Great. Thank you, Josh. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to present this design as we are currently refining. So here's my screen. Are you all able to see my screen? Okay. So on the camera, my face will be facing this way. My screen is over here, but I am still with you all. So I'll start with the vicinity plan, the vicinity transit connectivity plan. At the end, Josh mentioned how the site, we are located right here, this flag lot, right off of O'Mara Street, and the church is right here. The library would be just in this area. And then we have the senior center right here. One of the big things we wanted to kind of share in this is just diagrammatically, it shows the big presence of the Fennel Creek that really is an important piece. And the trail system is actually quite important as well. As you can see, it really connects you to all these other big thoroughfare on Hall Boulevard and such. This is also to show all the nearby bus stops, and most of the major highways more are like on the northwest, northeast side. There's some streets over here as well, but the bigger connective sites are streets and thoroughfares are on this side. So this is really to show how there are like amenities, transit amenities and connectivity pathways that we have at the site that we really want to harness and build to make sure that those are still available and clear. And going on to the overall bigger site, you all live here, so you're very familiar with the neighborhood. But overall view, what we wanted to share here really is, this is the site that we are talking about. Tiger Senior Center is located right in the center of this, holding the site down. It's a flag lot, so there's a small right-of-way that brings you, entry point that brings you to the site. And as you can see, what I showed earlier with the diagram, the green patch, that's our Fennel Creek, a very important natural resource that City of Tigard has really put forth to make sure that it's being preserved and well taken care of. One thing I also wanted to point out that is, more of the bigger developments are kind of more towards the northern side, and then on the southern side, we have more of the smaller scale, single family residential and those types of smaller building. One more thing I also wanted to point out is right by the Fennel Creek Trail, where it opens up on Hall Boulevard, There's Atwell at Maine, and that's another project that our office, Sarah, has designed. And so that kind of gives you a sense of scale and feeling of, what some of the projects that we've done and how we try to locate our building in a very gentle manner in the, natural preserve or Fano Creek or creek area. And the creek actually stretches along here. So a lot of the things that we are considering here actually something that we had considered on this particular project as well. So what we wanted to share is that we're actually quite familiar with this area and with this site and the importance of Fano Creek that we have to maintain. Zooming further closer into our own site, here's the Northwest Christian Church. The Tigard Senior Center is located right here. When we are looking at the site, what we wanted to make sure is what are our opportunities and what are the constraints and how we can really address that from pretty early on. And we have been very, very proactive in engaging with the community advisory group, also local jurisdiction, the deputy fire marshal, city officials, to really make sure that we are thinking correctly here as we analyze the site and providing the housing here. So one big thing we wanted to make sure, the connectivity that we talked about, the trails that connect you to the bigger right-of-ways, we wanted to make sure that that access is still clear and available for the pedestrians. So folks, community members and neighbors coming from O'Mara Street can easily find their way through to connect to the trail and the pathways. Similarly, we wanted to make sure that the functioning of the Tigard Senior Center was also never disrupted. They have a big patio here that looks out to the out onto the trail, Fano Creek Trail. We want to preserve that view, also preserve these views for the neighbors as well. So that greenery and everything, that resource is not gone. Another aspect that we really wanted to make sure was that the circulation on the site, the access, the circulation for the Tigard Senior Center was not disrupted, and the emergency access was all very clear and neatly laid out. Also, the movement of the residents for the Tigard Senior housing also is not conflicting with the operation and daily operation and routine of Tigard Senior Center. Another piece that we also wanted to make sure was because of the development that's coming here, and from what we heard from the community advisory group, we really wanted to make sure that we also maximize the parking and provide more parking on site. So taking those three aspects, and also because the Fano Creek Trail is right here, there's a designated floodplain, we wanted to make sure that we stayed away from the floodplain area and stayed clear. So taking those issues at the site and taking that to our advantage and seeing how we can lay that out, our conceptual plan is formulating in this format. So real quick, this particular site plan here, north is to the top. And because the site is a little elongated looking site, we have kind of turned it around. So north, when I share this plan here, the north is actually this way. So our Fano Creek preserve here, I've simplified here with just green and then the wetland area with the blue. And our O'Mara Street now is located here. So south is on this side, bringing people in through the right off of the main drive out. So first thing we wanted to make sure that the pedestrian access to the trail was uninterrupted and that the pedestrians and the neighbors didn't have to negotiate all the happenings inside the site between the Tigard Senior Center and Tigard Housing. So one big thing we have done here is to have this access right off of the right of way at O'Mara Street, taking you through along the side of the street, flanked between the church site and this particular Tigard Senior Housing and Tigard Senior Center site, taking you gradually down to the trail. And what we are aiming to ensure is that this trail is very gentle and gradual and is very amenable for anybody who's walking for different accessibility issues. Another thing then we did was to make sure that the access for the Tigard Senior Center was uninterrupted. So there's Meals on Wheels that kind of cater out of the west end of the Tigard Senior Center. And so we wanted to make sure that that drive aisle had clarity and there was nothing kind of disrupting that movement coming through. Also, for emergency access, we want to make sure that the fire truck or fire truck had a way to kind of locate itself, and we kind of verified all of that with Deputy Fire Marshal at the Tuolin Valley Fire and Rescue, and so we've vetted that. And then we also wanted to then increase the parking, provide parking for the senior housing separated from the operations and usage of the Tigard Senior Center. One more thing we also kind of did as we sited the building is, trying to stay away from the floodplain and really minimizing the footprint of the building. That was very important for us to minimize the bulk and the footprint of the building as much as we can. And so one of the things we've done is really making the footprint compact and very straight and without like interfering with other movements in the site. Also, because the site slopes down as you kind of go from this site. So Tigard Senior Center at the entry point is 1 story, but at the back, as you can see, it's a daylighted 2-story because the site slopes down. So using the same idea, we wanted to take advantage of that and debulk the building mass, so it was not as imposing. So what we've done here is, as the site slopes down, we broke the mass and stepped the building down. So this is the upper part of the building, and that sort of is the step down. And even the lower part, we want to make sure that the ground floor of this lower part is always raised, so being very aware of the floodplain and keeping the residents and everybody away from any of the water issue. So those are some of the primary things. And currently the site has 48 parking, and now we have increased it to 77 parking spaces. So we feel like we're actually doing really well on that aspect. We also wanted to preserve as much greenery on site as possible. So we have maintained the existing all the buffers and existing drive aisle as is coming, and we'll be making sure that those vegetation and everything maintains. And same thing back here, we'll preserve as a lot of the trees along here along the Fano Creek. With that, next, I'm going to go to the ground floor plan. Oh, one more quick thing here. We also wanted to make sure that the Tigard Senior Housing and the Tigard Senior Center really spoke to each other, and that there was ways to kind of interact and interchange between the 2 facilities, right? So we wanted to make sure that the entry point of the Tigard Senior Housing aligned with the face of the Tigard Senior Center. So there was like the synergy. When people gather, there's always like eyes on street, and there's, the community building is constantly enhanced. Also, we want to make sure that as you're kind of coming in, there's enough transparency along here that for the visitors who are coming in, it's very clear where they are arriving and where they need to go. That part, we want to make sure that that's very clear. Also, some of the amenity spaces that we have here, there might be synergy between the usage of between the Tigard Senior Center and the Tigard Senior Housing. So we wanted to make sure that that's also aligned. So the ground plane here becomes really active use and very vibrant. So to illustrate that, I'm going to go to our ground floor plan. So as you can see, the ground floor plan coming from here. So as you're kind of approaching, what we will see here is that's the view you will see as you're kind of coming in from the main drive aisle. And as you're heading in front of the building, we have common gathering spaces, lobby, meeting rooms. So all the spaces that are very active and have, people using it. And so there's eyes on the trail, eyes on the street. And so there's never insecurity or things like that, right? And then on the backside, we have all the support staff offices. So also they will be providing constant eyes on the pedestrian trail here. So nothing crazy can go. So it's very safe and secure. We're also providing some bike storage area here. So that's happening on this side. And all the other ones are the beige colored units are all residential units, 1-bedroom units that are all similar. So there's equity in the unit types and such. Moving to the upper floors, we have the typical floor is laid out with primarily all residential units. So it's really compacted and we're really aiming to make the building very efficient and no wasted space. So it's very compact, all residential units. In the end, we'll end up with 58 1-bedroom units for seniors. with that, I want to share what that view would be like as you're kind of coming in from the drive aisle. So the first view I'm going to share with you is as you're driving in here, you're like right about here, looking at this building, and you're getting a little glimpse of where the Tigard Senior Center is and that particular entry point. And that view is going to be looking like this. So what we're the pedestrian trail, connective trail that we were talking about, that's on the east side here. The church property is just to the east of us. There's some chaplain's residence or something further back here that you can see a little bit of the roof, and the trail just sort of um, the two sides are hugging the trail, and that kind of slopes down slowly where this guy is coming off of his bike going down to connect to the trail. And as you're coming in, you'll see the meeting room that I talked about. That's very that would be utilized at all times. The lobby that comes in from the entry point opens up here, so you'll see a lot of people hanging around here and getting connecting with the staff, support staff that are going to have the offices here. So this will have active eyes on the trail, on the frontage, all along here and all along this site. And then up top are all the residential units. Just as you're kind of approaching, like I said, you will see the entry point, the main entry of the Tigard Senior Center as well. So you'll see all of that kind of happening, and this provides almost this gateway taking you to this site. The next view I want to share with you is as you have now arrived and you've come a little bit further out here, and then now you're kind of taking a look from right about here out back to this area to see the new Tigard Senior Housing in relationship with the Tigard Senior Center. And that view is going to be like this. So as we were talking about, as I mentioned earlier, the building sort of sets back where the building slopes down. So that helps to really break the mass of the building. And so it doesn't look as, as big. And so it's actually quite amenable. It's at 44 foot height, which is very similar to the library that is just on the other side. And the footprint of the building is actually very small. It's only about 11,000 square feet, which is, I think, half the footprint or probably even more than what the library is. And one thing I wanted to also kind of illustrate here, I mean, this is a very conceptual image. Please don't take this as this is done and done image. We're still thinking this through, but as we're thinking this through, we're kind of just scaling, the scale of the housing, scale of the Tigard Senior Center, and the ground floor, the active ground floor, really matches very well with the Tigard Senior Center. This is the reading room, right? And then there's going to be the big gathering area here. So the function, the program function, and the scale with the canopy here all sort of really aligns between the two. And we feel like that really speaks well in that terms. So, and we're still developing this at this point, the materiality of the building. We're looking at a board and batten style. What we really wanted to do is we are right on the, right by the riparian edge of the, the wetland area. And what we wanted to make sure was when we chose the materiality of the building, that it had a lot of things that really harken to the trees, idea of trees and tree trunks. And these units, these residential units are almost nest-like, if you will, nestling in these trees, because this is sort of the environment here that we have here. And so these simple, very simple panel joints of a flat panel system sort of, it will depict the kind of like the branches and twigs that kind of, run about, and the windows are, so to speak, your nests from where our senior residents will be looking out, connected to the neighborhood and such. So with that, I will pause and open up for the next step, which is our Q&A session, I believe. So I'll stop sharing my screen for just for the time being, just so we can see everybody's faces. But if needed at any time, if you want me to pull up any image or anything, just let me know, and then I'll bring that back up.
All right, so our first question looks like it's going to Sean. Wasn't the light rail extension to Tigard voted down?
Oh yeah, the transportation measure that included a lot of projects, including light rail, was defeated. So, Southwest Corridor light rail project, I would say, is on hold. until other funding sources can be determined.
And folks, this portion of the presentation of the neighborhood meeting is intended to answer any questions that you have. So this is really for you. We're here available. And if you have questions in the future, can't think of them tonight, please email me and we will share another slide at the end of this. And that has my information and other online resources, including the city's engagement webpage, as well as NHA's outreach page for further information. Okay, looks like we have another question. Nope.
Specifically, if we are able to afford solar panels and get them onto the project, solar panels will run the community spaces, so the community room, the offices, the lobby, the hallways, those spaces that, that are able to be metered that way.
Great. Next question. I think, Gary, I might send it your way. It's going back to follow up to Karen's question about the drive-in.
Mm-hmm.
Will signage be posted to make clear that the access road to my property is private property and not available for parking?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this. Dustin, has expressed that concern to make sure that that is always very clear. And yeah, we will definitely be looking at to make sure that there isn't any confusion and we're not, the people who are coming here are not blocking anybody's passageway.
Great, thank you. And just to reiterate, we do apologize for those that did encounter technical difficulties. For those that arrived late, we will be sure to send you the presentation if you could just provide us with your email address in our demographic survey, and we will make sure that you get a copy of that. And this was recorded, so we can share that as well. Question for Destin: how many parking spaces and how many people will be living at this project?
We don't know how many people. We will have 57 affordable households on the property. But the household could be one to two people. It is all senior living, 62 years and older. So that will also control. Typically, that means there'll be singles on the property. I think that we have 78 parking spaces, 77. Right,
77. Yeah, we lost one with the turn radius. So 77, yeah.
Yeah, so that's up from the 48 that are currently on the property. The current layouts for the parking lots are incredibly inefficient. So by tightening them down, we're going to make them safer, and then also we're going to be able to get more parking spaces into the existing footprints. As Gori mentioned, we're very careful to try to locate the senior housing where it would impact the least number of existing parking spaces, and where it was least possible to have parking because of the slope of the site.
Mm-hmm.
So we really tried to maximize the parking at every step we have. We are going to have a parking management plan in order to watch over and make sure that, that there is sufficient parking spaces and that they are managed appropriately so that the senior center can continue to work as unimpeded as possible.
Good question from Jane. Thank you, Jane. Can you give an example of the income someone would need?
And I was scurrying to look this up. I know I should know this off the top of my head, but in Washington County, somebody at 60% AMI for a single person household would be $38,700. So a portion of our units will be available up to that income. The project-based Section 8 units are all prioritized to people of the lowest incomes, typically 30% or below, and that would be about $19,350. Most often with senior populations, it's folks that are on SSI and SSD.
If I can add, please feel free to email me any questions that you have, and also your email address so that I can email you the presentation. And then also, if you have any other questions, The city's engagement webpage has an FAQ section for questions and answers, and there are a lot of questions and really useful information about the project that we've encountered really since over the past year that have come in from folks that are interested in the project. So I would encourage you to check that out as well as email me for any questions or presentations that you would like. Okay, here's a great question. What square footage are the apartments?
Okay. Yeah, the apartments are currently let me do the count real quick. 576 square feet, yeah.
We got thanks from Karen. Thank you, Karen, for your questions. It's always great to be able to provide a thorough answer to our neighbors. And feel free to send more our way if you have any additional questions. Okay, great question from Kim. Thank you, Kim. If there's not enough parking, how do you intend to make sure residents will not use Chelsea Loop as a parking space?
Might hand this over to Sean a little bit as well. We aren't able to police the streets. That is the work of the city of Tigard. We have been focusing again on 62 and older, which are the least likely to have vehicles and are most likely to want to take advantage of public transit in their livelihood. We believe that there's enough parking spaces from other senior properties that we operate in the metro area and throughout Oregon. And again, we're going to have a parking management plan so that we can watch over and make sure that we only provide the correct number of placards and the correct signage for the two different uses so that they don't conflict as much as possible. Typically, people that are utilizing a lot of vehicles are people that go to work. And so the use periods of the two different facilities are not the same. The senior center gets used primarily during the day when people that would have cars that are going to work would be away. And then vice versa, the parking lot is largely empty in after hours and early morning hours when residents that are going to work would be utilizing it. But we're going to keep a close watch on the parking on the property as we can.
Yeah, I mean, if it does turn out that there's spillover into the neighborhood, you know, the city can consider certain things like, you know, time limits to the parking or a permit system. I mean, those are all things that that could be explored if it does become a problem.
I saw a few questions there. So is this additional 77? So the answer there is the total is 77 parking on site. And the size of the parking stalls, we are looking at that, and we will make, you know, we will kind of distribute some bigger sized stalls within here to make sure that there are spaces for some varied sized mobiles as well.
A couple more questions. Justin, are washer and dryers included in the apartments?
They are not included in the apartments. We encourage social interaction. And so we've got a common laundry on the property where residents can go down and do their laundry, intermingle, sit and play cards, you know, hopefully view out into Fano Creek from that location. It's much more efficient and much more cost effective for the residents to do the common laundry so that they don't have those costs maintaining that equipment. We do have dishwashers in unit. And we do have, of course, refrigerators and stoves in unit.
Do the units include all appliances and utilities and cable?
Didn't hear that question.
Do the units include all appliances and utilities as well as cable, including cable?
They include all appliances, but not all utilities. Water and sewer are paid for by the apartment itself. Electricity is paid for by the tenant, as is a cable and telephone. It's paid for by the tenant.
Will parking spots be assigned to designated apartments?
Sorry, it's hard to hear you, Josh.
Yeah.
Lost your audio.
Yeah, it's very mumbly.
Sorry about that. Will parking spots be assigned to designated apartments?
I don't believe we will do that. I think we might have some dedicated apartment spaces on the property, but we tend to, it's better to mix and allow people to mix for parking efficiency than it is to assign a parking space that might be otherwise idle during the day or during the night.
But you'll consider things like parking placards, right?
Correct. One of the regular and usual things for parking management plan is to only give out a certain number of parking placards for residents and to have those displayed very visibly so that we know that they are parking in the correct areas and that they're not impeding other people's use of the facilities. And we will have a full-time on-site property manager and a part-time resident services coordinator on-site.
Josh, I see there's a question about the old Ferguson plumbing location, whether it was considered for this building. So no, but there's going to be a really great project happening there that'll be in very walking distance for this neighborhood, and that's the Universal Plaza. It's going to be a central gathering place for the city. There's going to be a water feature. There's going to be lights and lawns, and it'll be a great space for the community to get together. And I think it'll be a really cool project for Tigard.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, if I can emphasize again, there are a lot of exciting things happening in downtown Tigard right now. As Sean just mentioned, the Universal Plaza, the downtown corridor, the urban renewal district. You have what we're doing with our project. It's really coming together, and it's exciting to see Tigard continue to develop. So that's great things. So keep up the good work, Sean and your colleagues. Okay, here's another question on rent. What is the minimum and maximum rent for each unit?
So we have units at 60% AMI currently, and that would be $957 a month. And we have units which have project-based Section 8, and there will be no control over those rents. Those rents will always be set at 30% of the tenant's income.
Here's a question. I'm not really sure how to answer it best, but for seniors who live here and you say may not have cars, where do you expect them to get groceries? With Fred Meyer, Safeway being over 1 mile away. Now I know, Destin, on some of our other projects, we've had grocery runs as part of our programming services. Can you touch on that?
Yeah. So there is good transportation here. There are buses within easy walking distance. But Josh is correct. There are also senior vans and senior transportations that are available to people in the area. And our resident service coordinators will coordinate those activities along with trips to dentists and doctors, social gatherings and social events, things of that nature. So transportation is available. Mass transportation is available and supported.
Apologize. It just occurred to me I may have skipped over a slide during the presentation earlier, the project timeline. For any questions that folks may have, we are not expected to finish design until late summer, early fall of this year.
Josh, do you want to share that screen? I'll stop sharing mine and then maybe you can pull up the timeline. That way it's visible, right?
Yes. Deb, can you share that screen, please? Great. Thank you so much. So we are not expected to complete design until the fall, with financial closing occurring from November 2021 to February of 2022. We then expect to begin construction in about a year from now, which will take about 15 months, with construction project completion anticipated for spring 2023. We anticipate coming online in the summer of 2023 for anyone that has any interest in maybe joining our community. And Deb, if you could load the final slide with my contact information, that would be terrific. Thank you. So for folks that have any questions in the future or couldn't think of them tonight, please feel free to reach me. I'm the project manager for this project at carrillo@nhwhousing.org. I can also be reached at the number here, extension 115. In addition to that, other online resources provided by the City of Tigard is their engagement webpage, which you can find here. And it has tons of useful, helpful information on the project, going back to really the beginning of the project conception. And also feel free to visit us at NHA. We have a project webpage with the link included here for your reference. So in addition to the City of Tigard, feel free to check us out and hopefully we can provide the information that you need. And if I can remind everyone one last time, if you can, when exiting the Zoom meeting, if you could please take a moment and fill out our demographic survey. Because it really does help us continue to refine our program and continue to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our community.
Josh, you want to answer that question about sewer and water?
Thank you, Sean. Great question from David. Thank you, David. Will pre-existing sewer and water lines be moved or impacted? If so, how will this impact O'Mara's traffic flow?
So I can answer that question. We are going to have to relocate a sewer line on site. We're trying to build a building right where there is one. It will not impact O'Mara. We will be able to put down a new sewer line and then connect it at either end. So Any disruption that might occur, and I don't believe any will occur, would be momentarily as they swap the connection and on site.
Yeah, the city will also be sending out another mailer with more project information, probably in mid-March. So look for that in your mailbox.
Any other questions for the panelists? Please don't be shy, folks. Another question from Jane. Thank you, Jane. So where is the sewer line going to run?
The relocated sewer line is going to run down the road between the new senior housing and the senior center.
Great, thank you, Destin.
There's another question about parking. Parking will not be a free-for-all. It'll be a managed parking plan. We will have signage for how long people will be able to utilize spots. There'll be placards for the cars and designated areas for the residents to use and not use. We will have security cameras up to make sure that it's being used effectively.
Right, and as a reminder, the senior center, their hours of operation are typically 9 to 3, just during the week. So that could really present an opportunity to share parking spaces. Good opportunity. When there's a peak usage at the senior center, there would be less residents at home, and when senior center is done for the day, there'll be those spaces available. Dustin, did you guys mention how many senior housing apartments you manage with NHA?
Oh my, it is about a third, I believe, of our portfolio of 2,100 units right now. So we have projects as close as Wilsonville and projects as far away as Hermiston that we manage. It's a population near and dear to our hearts.
So about at a third, that's almost like 700 units of senior residents. That's incredible.
Well, if folks don't have any more questions, then we may wrap up and couple minutes here, but we're here for you. So I mean, the more questions you have, we'll stay longer. But if not, then we'll sign off in about a couple minutes here. And again, feel free to contact me directly with any questions. Feel free to visit the city or NHA's web pages for this particular project. And again, a lot of useful information. And for any questions that haven't been answered by either of those online resources, again, please, I encourage you, please feel free to contact me and we will make sure that we get in contact with you. And also, thank you for attending this neighborhood meeting. It's really great to have citizen involvement and local interest in our projects. So thank you again. Your input is very valuable for us as we continue to design and refine the project. Okay, I have a question from David. Thank you, David. Does the city have any plan to change signage for a dozen parking spots on Chelsea Loop within walking distance of the senior center to prevent long-term resident parking? Sean, I think I'm going to throw that your way.
Yeah. Well, we don't anticipate parking to be a problem, but we will monitor the situation. If we do find that there is people parking on the street all day who are residents, we can take a look at some management systems for public streets. And those include things like time limited hours and, potential for, in some neighborhoods, there are parking permit system. So those are things that could be explored. But again, we're gonna, monitor the situation, see if it's a problem. Public streets, people are allowed to park on streets, but at the same time, we also don't want, Chelsea Loop to become a permanent spillover parking lot for the development. So we will monitor the situation and address it if it becomes a problem.
Any other questions for me or for the panelists? Nope. Okay, well, if there are no more further questions, I think we will we'll wrap this up. And again, if you have questions in the future, tonight, tomorrow, anytime in the next few months, feel free to send them to me. And as well as check out the City of Tigers engagement webpage and NHA's project page for our Tigers Senior Housing Project. I'd like to thank our panelists for participating tonight and taking the time and knowledge to go ahead and answer the questions that have come in. And again, thank you attendees for participating, and hopefully we've answered your questions and shared some really good design input. Thank you, Sarah Architects and Gary. And again, any further questions, we will please send them our way. We're not done with the project yet. There is still a long ways to go. I think as I mentioned earlier, construction will not break ground for about another year. But yeah, we just want to make sure we're being inclusive and giving the community timely updates. So thank you again. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.